Hi everyone. Firstly, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land that we're gathering on this afternoon, the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation. I pay my respects to their elders, past, present and emerging, and also to any First Nations people here with us today or live streaming the launch. Thank you all to all the beautiful speakers who've shared their stories, their poetry, and asked us many provocative questions. Love a good imaginative gem to just detach a little bit from the Wuhan handshake world that we're in. So on November the 23rd, 1996, my mum, my favourite Auntie Caroline and I went along to an anti-racism rally down George Street in Sydney in response to One Nation's xenophobic rally cry that Australia was being swamped by Asians. We spent a good 4 hours making our long live multiculturalism sign, and Mum packed us pork loaf and singles cheese sandwiches for the occasion. We marched so proudly, me in my pigtails, Auntie Caroline with a Democratic Socialist Party sign that she found on the ground. I was so stoked that Mum let me wear my favourite Little Miss Naughty t-shirt, even though it smelled like tuna and feet. And that was the same t-shirt that I wore earlier in the year, in 1996, to Waverley Courthouse, after Mum, Grandma, Grandpa and I had been sued by our downstairs neighbours for making too much noise. They accused us of running around in high heels and dropping spoons on the floor at 1, 2 and 3 a.m. They accused me of playing the piano, smashing out ear saws, not sonatas, at 3, 4 and 5 a.m. Day after day, unruly foreigners, uneducated in the ways of common Australian decency. It was a rather traumatic and a very expensive ordeal. And when I think back on this bizarre time, on the court reporter who took pity on me and the nice neighbours who came out to support us in scenes straight from an oddball provincial French comedy film, I wonder if my family indeed led secret lives at night. I sometimes get very paranoid that we were actually sleepwalkers, sleep supermodels and pianists, unable to prove or disprove our petulance in waking life. But aged 8, I guarantee you I was not playing the piano for fun in the middle of the night. And if I had practiced every night in my sleep, I would have been a prodigy, but I didn't. I definitely did not practice the piano in my sleep, and I definitely was not a moon-faced Mozart. So in the courtroom, we quietly denied all charges, Mum smiling politely on the stand while my aunties translated the prosecutor's prose to my grandparents. And in the end, we moved out of that apartment block. The number of Asian occupants went from 2 units to 1, and we never spoke of that incident again. 24 years later, as the coronavirus, or recklessly labelled China virus, ignites racist sentiment towards and within the Asian diaspora worldwide, I find myself getting paranoid that perhaps we are all sleep racists, sleep supremacists in some form or another, unable to prove or disprove our sincerity or our potential for solidarity in the face of a survivalist existence. I self-flagellate over subconsciously leaning into my Aussie accent to strangers a la primary school playground assimilation days. I practice owning and announcing my privileges but feel ashamed. I try distrusting myself in order to trust myself better, which works sometimes but mostly doesn't. I discover that even though no one's taking me to court for being noisy, I still have this inbuilt mechanism to say without saying, to subvert myself, to shut up, to smile, and to tuck my hair behind my ear, just in case. I also discover that a great way to fight paranoia is by drinking more water, by being kind to people with different opinions to me, and by producing work. So here goes. As part of Next Wave Festival's Government of Artists, my co-creator and playwright Keziah Warner our co-director Alice Qin, and our beautiful creative team and cast and I are on a warpath of love, demonstrating how hate speech can be flipped on its head to generate ideas and solutions to shape a more tolerant society. So you may remember back in 1997, One Nation supporters published a book called Pauline Hanson, The Truth. If you never got round to reading the 234-page masterpiece, it features a delightful morsel of creative writing, which imagines Australia in the year 2050, ruled by Poona Li Hung, a lesbian Chinese-Indian cyborg president. So using this source material as inspiration, we're creating an immersive political dramedy theatre show called Poona, which will run for 3 weeks at the Chinese Museum in Chinatown. Audiences can expect an exhilarating boiler room experience, playing Poona's campaign staffers, snacking on dried insects and watching scandal after scandal unfold in the 80 minutes leading up to the announcement of the 2050 presidential election results. So, without further ado, I would like to transport you 30 years into the future, when pizza-flavoured crickets are jumping around in your kids' lunchboxes and news holograms are entirely filmed on green screen. Introducing Australia's first cyborg presidential candidate, occupying the 2020 body of Elsa Twitt Rosenberg, in the thick of her campaign trail, Poona Li Hung.
Keep me home among the gum trees with lots of plum trees. A sheep, a tuak, a kangaroo, a close one out the back, veranda out the front, and an old rocking chair.
As a cyborg, a settler, and a beneficiary of colonial Australia's criminal history, I pay my deepest respects to the Woiwurrung-speaking Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, the traditional custodians of the unceded land on which this new parliamentary tower stands. I am infinitely grateful to their elders from yesterday's, today and tomorrow's for their tireless leadership, creativity, sacrifice and commitment to our collective partnership with the land and with each other. We will never be freed from our ancestors' actions, and our descendants will have ours in their DNA. To any First Nations people in the room tonight, and to those watching at home, I reiterate my honour with which I pay my long life invasion tax, and pledge my ongoing allegiance to supporting the repatriation of ancestral remains and sacred objects. This was always Aboriginal land. This is Aboriginal land, and this will always be Aboriginal land. My name is Poona Li Hung, leader of the independent Poona Party and candidate for this year's 2050 presidential election. Thank you. Before I begin, I would like to give a shout out to my mentor and former Australian President, Penny Wong. Thank you. Former Canadian President, Malala Yousafzai. American President, Emma Gonzalez. And United Nations Secretary, General Dr. Greta Thunberg. Thank you all for your courage under fire and your continual pursuit for equality for all entities. Your personal sacrifices have paved the way for my own political journey, and I hope to inspire young cyborgs and robots as much as you've inspired me. While this afternoon I am expected to share my trauma, bleed tears, not ferrofluid, before you, and display my so-called humanity to gain your trust, I have a more salient point to address. That is, the continued elevation of human beings over cyborg and robot beings in this country. Young ones who received primary school education after 2045 have been taught to reject the archaic association between an entity's perceived humanity and their integrity, their ability to feel, their trustworthiness. However, the majority of Australians continue to live in a caste system created and ruled by humans, with cyborgs like myself deemed second-class citizens and robots like Umami, my partner, subjected to unspeakable robophobic hatred. This must come to an end. Humanity is not a virtue. It is a physiological condition, a set of cellular circumstances through which kindness, compassion, or corruption may be enacted. Cyborgs can feel. Robots can love. So to ask a robot to show their human side is both nonsensical and offensive. To expect me to striptease my humanity through tasteless photo shoots, cooking imperfect dumplings with my human mother is both nonsensical and offensive. My father's death is my father's death, not the media's. And while the memory of his brutal short-circuiting will fuel my pursuit for cybernetic empathy until my internal battery dies, I do not owe anyone his story or mine. If I become President of Australia, what I will owe you is to swear on the stars that I will not break Law 0.1 of the new parliamentary oath, to never harm entity kind or the land, or by inaction, allow entity kind or the land to come to harm. And with you as my witness, with the sky and the earth supporting my truth, I swear it. I will also take this opportunity to highlight some of the invaluable benefits to having a cybernetic head of state. I have no need for holidays. I can choose to dissolve my feces inside my large intestine. Illicit substances do not affect my cognitive function, and my internal processes prohibit me from betraying scientific data and institutional checks and balances in pursuit of my own personal interests or those of the independent Poona Party. Furthermore, I can copulate with my partner to orgasmic completion just by saying their name over 6 seconds, which means I am never sexually frustrated and almost always in a state of afterglow. I am also known for my impossible multitasking abilities. And since the commencement of this speech, I have made trade deals with both Finland and the United Arab Emirates, discussed the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Robot with Dr. Thunberg, and walked my dogs Balzi and Ibe 5 times around the Colosseum in second reality. In conclusion, we make a very good match, you and I. So vote 1 Poona for President, 2050 this coming election. And in the words of HAL 9000 from Kubrick's 2001 A Space Odyssey, I am putting myself to the fullest possible use, which is all I think that any conscious entity can ever hope to do. Thank you very much.